Last month, the U.S. saw the most arrests at the southern border in 22 years. According to the Department of Homeland Security, many migrants are coming from countries outside Mexico and the Northern Triangle. Immigration reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez is here in Studio 57 to discuss the new statistics. Good to see you, my friend.
Good morning.
So we know why there's been a record number of Ukrainians coming to the border, but border officials have also reported a record number of migrants coming from Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia. Why is that significant?
That's right, Vlad. U.S. border officials processed more than 32,000 Cubans in March. That is a record that made that Caribbean country the second largest source of migrants to the U.S. border, surpassing countries like Guatemala and Honduras. Only Mexico sent more countries to the U.S. border.
32,000.
That's
yes,
amazing.
32,000.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we saw 16,000 Nicaraguans and 15,000 Colombians enter U.S. border custody in March, both all-time highs for those countries. Nearly 40% of the migrants apprehended at the U.S.-Mexico border in March were not from Mexico or from Central America's Northern Triangle. That is an unprecedented demographic shift that is posing major logistical challenges for the administration because the U.S. cannot currently return large numbers of migrants to Cuba or Nicaragua because of the strained diplomatic relationships with those countries. And finally, Mexico only accepts the return of its citizens and nationals of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. So for the most part, migrants from other countries are either released into the interior of the country or they're detained by U.S. officials.
It's such a complicated picture. What about Ukrainians, Camilo? How many Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war have actually been coming to the U.S.?
More than 3,000 Ukrainians have been processed by U.S. border officials at the Mexican border in March alone. That is relatively low compared to the numbers for other nationalities, but it is an unprecedented number and an 1,100% increase from February. We're seeing Ukrainians travel to Mexico because many of them need visas to come here directly, and they either don't qualify for those visas or have no way of getting them. So they're traveling to the U.S.-Mexico border, where U.S. officials have been instructed to exempt them from the Title 42 expulsion policy and to process them and allow them to enter the U.S. on humanitarian grounds. So unlike many of the migrants from Mexico and Central America, Elaine, these Ukrainian asylum seekers are being processed into the U.S.
How will the decision to lift Title 42 next month affect the situation at the border?
Well, U.S. border officials, Vlad, will no longer have this unprecedented pandemic tool that allows them to expel migrants very quickly without processing their asylum claims. And officials expect numbers of migrants to arrive and to increase at the U.S.-Mexico border once Title 42 is lifted. The numbers, as you already mentioned, are already very high, a 22-year high, but they are inflated by a very high rate of repeat crossings among single adults who are being expelled to Mexico and then trying to come back into the country again. So we may see that rate of repeat crossings be reduced after Title 42 is lifted, but we expect overall arrivals to increase because we expect smugglers to tell migrants that it is easier now to stay in the U.S. Because remember, this is a business for smugglers who often don't care about the welfare of migrants.
Right, and they're keeping a very close eye, obviously, on U.S. policy. So then is there a chance that Title 42 does not end on May 23rd as currently planned?
Well, we're seeing a growing number of Democrats, Elaine, join Republicans in urging the CDC to delay the termination of this policy. But I think that unless the White House intervenes or there's some major pandemic development, it is unlikely that the CDC will reverse its decision because the agency made it very clear that it does not believe that this policy is needed right now to prevent the spread of the coronavirus because of improving pandemic conditions and the availability of mitigation protocols such as vaccines. There is the possibility that the Department of Homeland Security asks the CDC for more time. The CDC already gave DHS 2 months to implement this policy change, so that's possible. Another possibility is that a federal judge rules against the administration and blocks its termination from happening. 21 Republican-led states are already asking a federal judge in Louisiana to do justice to block the termination of Title 42. And we've already seen several Trump-appointed judges block several Biden administration immigration policies.
It's very much an evolving situation at the border. Camilo, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.